It's just trying to remember where
I'm
everything
also
is.
starting now the live stream on YouTube. So please, Calvi, share the screen. And welcome to everyone who is at the moment in the Zoom call. Wait a second. I will now deactivate that. So Calvi, are you sharing or can you share?
I thought I was sharing.
I
Not
don't
yet.
know. You have to take over.
Hold on, let me click the stop share. I will share screen. And I will continue. And I will do this. And I will do this.
Oh, wait a second. It was one moment. It was set that multiple people can share.
Ah,
Who did this?
I didn't. Wasn't me.
Wasn't me either. One moment. No, I'm sharing. Damn. I didn't want to do that. Oh, can you now wait a second. Okay, that's now we are, I think, stopping sharing. So, Kelby, can you start again?
Yeah, I can do this all day long. There we are.
Okay.
Yes.
And now
Yay!
now we have only one person sharing. Okay. After some hiccups, so let me just check if we are now having the right stuff out there. That looks good. Okay. So welcome again to everyone here. We have already a filling up room. Welcome to the tutorial how not to write ugly robot framework code. And I will briefly introduce our awesome hosts here. So my name is René Rohner. I am the chairman of the board of Robot Framework Foundation, and I'm the facilitator of that tutorial today. We do have now present our awesome test automation specialist from Netherlands, Guido. Guido, can you just say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Then we have our American test automation specialist, musician, and also code fetishist is Calby Stein. Hello.
Hello.
And we do have Manana. You're from Norway, right?
Georgia, but living in Finland.
Living in Finland. So our Norwegian Finnish automation specialist here, Manana.
Georgian.
Hello. Oh, sorry. So, yeah. Then I will directly hand over to you guys. So have fun and enlighten us how to not write ugly code. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the party. Disclaimer as usual, no gnomes are harmed during the production of this presentation. I always like saying that because I was accused of gnome trafficking during RoboCon a couple weeks ago. So there you are. So we've already done the basic introductions. Come on. Here's our contact information as far as like if you want to find us on Slack. Here we are. It's pretty easy to find me. I'm the only Kelby on Slack thus far. But also Manana and Gita are pretty easy to find. Style guide. Why do we do this? So first of all, welcome. There's going to be a little bit of talking, a little bit of hands-on work, a little bit of opinion polling, so to speak, just to get a sense of understanding where the style guide fits in your day-to-day operations. As I've said before in my presentation back in 2022, I'm sure a lot of you have been working in the field and have come up with some sort of style guides, best practices on your own. And the bottom line is now we've sort of taken some of that information from the field and we're sort of making like a core starting point for so that you don't have to do that ever again. Or if you do, you have a solid foundation that you can modify to make your own. When we'll get into that a little bit better. So why style matters? First of all, readability. I don't know about you, but when you're actually troubleshooting tests that are being run or your RPA code, will speed you up if you can easily read the code that's actually been written. Consistency. Creating a set of norms between each of the team members so that, test automator Bob is writing and using the same language conventions, the same coding style as, Susie test automator. And it doesn't have to be, and also understanding when not to be consistent. Sometimes, you create a set of rules, a set of conventions, but sometimes, and not sometimes, always, you will come across situations where you're going to have to learn how to break the rules or modify them in particular test cases. But at least you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you comment the code to make sure that you let the person know that, oh yeah, this is not following code conventions, or it's not following your style because said reason. And that leads into tools. Hold on. Okay.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
Yep. So tools, we're going to go over some of the tooling besides the style guide itself. We're going to be making references to tools like RoboCop and RoboTidy, which we highly recommend that you use. The one thing that I would say, though, is when we built the style guide, we came from the direction of what if you didn't have these tools and you had to do everything manually? So there's very few, if little, references to those tools in the style guide itself, but that was on purpose. But we're going to be able to show you how you can do a little bit of, hey, I really like this style. How do I enforce it using RoboCop or RoboTidy? And that is my section, I believe. Somebody take over.
Yes. I guess now we can show what style guide exists, where it is, and how it can be used. So I'll show in a moment.
Actually, before we move on, so yes, we are okay. Yes, never mind. Time out. Coordination. This is all rehearsed. This is all rehearsed.
But I would like to say something. Everyone who's willing to open the camera, you're very welcome to open the camera so that Kelby, Manana, and Rido get a little bit of feedback of you, your impressions, your like thumbs up or something when they're explaining something. You will not be on the recording on the YouTube stream, so only if you open your microphone and say something, people will see you out in the world. So feel free to just give our great presenters a little bit of visual feedback. Thank you.
There we go. Take it away, Manana.
Thank you. Yes. So, what exists? What kind of style guide exists? So 2 years ago, we gathered to write this style guide, and currently it is available in Docs Robot
Timo, you're
Framework
muted.
org.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the style guide now is available in the Docs Robot Framework org website. If we go to guides and then style guide, we have it here. So at this point, this is at version 0.8 beta. And it gives recommendations how to structure code, how to format code, how to arrange certain parts. It's easy to navigate from the left side menu, and we try to order it according to sections, settings, variables, test cases, and keywords. We have here also included both test case examples and RPA examples, where RPA includes tasks instead of test cases, though they are used similarly. We also have here some different options for styling. For example, in the variable assignment syntax, let's say we can have either one style or the other, for example, one without equal signs and the other with equal signs. So this can be explored as well. Yeah, I will not go through detailed contents now. It's free to explore and use, and we will talk about its usage later. But I will show where this style guide is being developed, where our pull requests are, and where the source code is located. And we will share these links as well. So this is our style guide repo. And we would love more stars. So please feel free to bookmark or star it. And feel free to create issues or have a look and give us feedback. We have here some instructions how to contribute and folder structure and introduction. So this is the repository where all the writing happens. And after that.
Manana, could you just show them the issues page really quick?
Yes. Yes.
We would like to point out that our work is not done. We have several issues we're working on. So if you don't see something that's not covered in the style guide yet, it's not covered by these issues, go ahead and send in a report, please. You know, because that's how we plan working on these items. And gosh darn it, if you see something that's glaringly missing, especially by the end of this tutorial, please add it to the issues area. Thank you. Continue, Manana.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you can just click on the new issue and create one, and we will definitely pay attention to it. So, yeah, so this is available, and you are very welcome to use. And this style guide is a written form of recommendations. But of course, there are other means as well that complement this style guide. And I will pass now this word to Keito.
Yes, just for all the participants, I just linked the repo in the chat here. So if you want to have a look now to start it, or later on, go ahead. Let me see. So I will take over the screen because I want to say something about the two tools that are already helping a lot in styling and making our code a lot nicer. Mateus and I always have to remember Bartholomew, I think it is. They already created 2 great tools that help us create much nicer code. One of them is RoboCop. It has been presented several times already, also on RoboCon. It is a tool that is really helping, and I will show how it can help you a little bit more later on. But I just want to mention that we use RoboCop a lot, and that we've also have a lot of rules that are matching with what RoboCop is doing. And if you see any discrepancies between them, please let us know, because then we will discuss with Mateus and Bart how we want to proceed on that one. So RoboCop is one of the tools. The other one is RoboTidy, which where RoboCop is just a linter, so it shows you what you've done wrong, or what is not according to the rules that have been set. RoboTidy actually fixes it for you. So that has transformers that actually change your code, while RoboCop as a linter doesn't change your code, it just tells you where things go wrong. And we'll go over some examples later on.
Guido, when you're sharing
Yes.
screen or sharing a window, can you maximize it and maybe zoom a little bit in?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
like sharing the full screen, but then having a small window on it does not really help. Yeah. Awesome.
This
Thank you.
probably works better. If you want to have a look at the tools themselves and the rules they have, RoboCop has a complete list of all the rules. So you can see all the rules that they already have. As you can see, that's quite a lot. The same goes for RoboTidy, the transformers that they have. You can see them here on the left, and if you click on them, you will be able to see what it does. And they give some examples. Okay, this is before, this is after you've done it. You run the transformer, and there's also a tab when you use it with a certain setting that you've changed. So that really helps creating or updating your code in a in a more and nicer way. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over back to Manana to show how we can use the style guide to go from really bad formatted code to some much nicer code. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. And also to the participants, please feel free to ask question if you have, or if you have some comment. This is open discussion, and we would love to hear any questions or comments. Yeah, so we mentioned that there is a style guide and there are certain tools. Now I show some example how ugly code might look like, and how style guide and conventions help us make it more readable. Let me share the link. So I will briefly explain what it does. Technical implementation at this point is not important. So this is a code which extracts text from the web article, in this case from Wikipedia article, and it counts a given number of words in the text, and then it prints the sorted dictionary. Let's look at this code and the style guide side by side. Now, let's start from the settings section. So we have used several libraries, set up, tear down, and we have not really used it in a consistent way. For example, library is in the first place, then we have library in the end. Also, set up and tear down sequence might not be quite logical. So we can always refer to style guide and check what is the recommended option. And we are also missing some documentation. For example, we can add some description. Yeah, this is and yeah, we can sort libraries so that built-in libraries are listed first, and then comes third party, and then custom libraries, so that we can easily identify and navigate and add more libraries when we need them. For example, we can move these collections after save time for typing, so we can sort this way. And maybe then we can sort also setups and tear downs. And add some test text. Yeah, we don't need this library here anymore. So hopefully this looks better now, because items are arranged in logical order in certain groups, and it's easier to read and extend. So similarly, we have here variables. We can visit variables section and check what are the conventions. Should it be written with uppercase, lowercase? Should we use underscore? Should we not use underscore? And so on. I think it will take too long time now to show how we can refactor completely this code format, how we can sort settings in the keywords and test cases. So I will just show a pretty example. So what can be the final result, and we compare then these two. So let me show the original code. And now let's have a look at the version. Hopefully better-ish. So this was initially our settings, and this is how we can arranged initially variables with more consistent naming and better alignment. Test cases, more consistent arguments, keywords, more logical sequence of the settings. And particularly when the code is complicated, it includes a lot of loops or if conditions or nested structures, it's also important to separate them with spaces and clear indentations. And all these recommendations are can be found in the style guide. So this is how we can transform our code with the help of the guideline and being consistent. Yeah. So I think.
So
yeah.
At this moment, are there already people that say, "Oh, that we've never seen or never done it that way," or "I'm always doing it this way," or a little bit different?
I mean, I
see.
used language server, and it got kind of auto tidied it up, so never really used it other way around. But yeah, probably now robot language server is deprecated. This is going to be preferred way.
Yes, but also with robot code, if you use robotidy, it can still do some of the things, and I will be showing that in a little bit how that will help. I also see Garen.
Yes. One thing that I noticed is when you create, or at least in your example, when you create a variable inside a user keyword. So if you scroll down a little bit, when you create the dictionary, you still use the end sign. And I was wondering if that's something that's part of the style guide, or is that something that's just customary for you? I was briefly skimming through the issues and I didn't see it there, so I figured I'd ask that one, because I've been telling people no, dollar signs everywhere except in the variable sections, but I'm not entirely sure which one's which at this point, so I figured I'd ask that one.
Yeah, good catch. This is not in the style guide at the moment, but I personally prefer to notice what type of variable it is. So this just gives me the hint. But we have not come up with a convention yet, and that's a very good point. It's good to discuss and then document in style guide. Oh, that was very good point.
Yeah, and I think in the future, if I'm not wrong, there was a plan also to change the add something to actually be an open list, so that whatever you assign there, even if it's one value, it would be the first entry of a tuple or so. So there were actually ideas of deprecating this. So like warning, hey, if you have here an add list something and you assign something, you always will also have a list. But I think at the moment it has no difference.
Yeah, it doesn't have any impact, which is why it's a cosmetic choice, right? It is a choice to indicate, like, I'm creating a dictionary here. I use the ampersand, or on the other one, you've got the add sign to indicate like you've got a list. But yeah, it caught my eye. Figured I'd ask. So it's something that I'll put on the issue list.
Yes, thank you. Yes, please do.
And I can interject here with the new var syntax.
Makes a difference.
The keywords like create dictionary and create list will probably not be as useful as they have been. Because then you could just, because then you use the @ symbol and the and symbol and the dollar sign when you're using the new var syntax in Robot Framework 7.
Yeah. And actually, I know that RoboCop has a linting rule. Like if you say var at list and then nothing more, that it complains, hey, you should assign an empty list there. And I would actually object that decision. But this is again this taste, you know.
I see another hand from Robin.
Yes.
Yeah.
if you're using a create dictionary or create list, my personal preference is actually to just use the dollar, because then if you're not using the dollar for that variable, you're actually expanding it. So there's a difference in usage. So now here in assignment, you're kind of free to do whatever, but if you do a for item in your variable, then you need to be precise. Then the dollar doesn't work. You need to, so it becomes special case. So for me, the thing goes like, if it's not special, use the default, right? Use the dollar whenever possible and only use the others when you actually absolutely need to. But that's also a way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I do see another hand, Konstantin.
Yeah, sorry if this is a little bit beyond the scope of this workshop, but I would be interested to know why we have this at and the ampersand in the first place, because obviously Python can do without explicit data type declarations. And if someone could tell a few words on his historical context, I would be very pleased. But if it would be outside of this, as I said, that it's not that important.
That definitely falls in the category of that's more like the inner workings of robot framework.
Okay.
But to that point, robot framework, while it borrows quite a bit from Python, it's still not quite Python. So that's a lot of things. Like a lot of people, when they're starting to use robot framework, they're coming from Python, or in early days you coming from like Java, and you would just start using your styling, your methodology in Python world or Java world in robot framework. But robot framework is kind of its own thing with its own particular quirks, and that would be one of the quirks. So yes, it's beyond the scope, but it does make sense to bring it up here because that there's a difference. But so like, what's the difference between the style guide and the user guide? User guide's telling you the mechanics is what we're talking about here, what you just talked about, the mechanics. And style guide is how do you make those mechanics make sense when you're reading the code? So otherwise, you can just ask Pekka. Just ask Pekka.
Okay.
Joking.
He will definitely know.
He would definitely know.
Yeah. Of course, Slack channel. Yeah. And someone will definitely give the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good discussions. I think we can maybe do some small hands-on work.
Yes. We should put the gnomes to work.
Yes, we should. Yeah. So I will share the link to some tiny examples, and just a second, I will put them in. So I am sharing the link now in chat. And here, let me also show. We have 3 different examples, and hopefully now participants can try to make it better, more readable and tidy. You can use style guide and also your own judgment. I will show how this works. So if you open any of the links, and feel free to choose any example you like, you can modify it right here to anything. And from this share link, you can copy the link and drop in our form. I will share the link to the form as well.
Now, of course, for those of you who are already using RoboTidy and RoboCop, don't cheat. Do it manually.
Yeah, that's a good
We're
point.
already onto your game. So
you're telling me not to use my invoke format code? That's so much work.
I was gonna say, you're asking lazy IT people, because we are all supposed to be lazy, to do manual labor. Feels
Yeah.
very
Exactly.
That's deliberate to make us think how we write code, because also it's important during writing to keep good habits and understand what we are writing ourselves. So, yeah.
also to appreciate the tools that we've developed to make life better for us.
Yeah.
Also, if you're curious, I'm spaces over tabs. So I don't know, to fill up because while you're quickly working through things, one thing I would like to say is the Style Guide group has been meeting once every 2 weeks, and we sort of we talk over uh we've been using a lot of what's already been out there um on the internet, as far as like the user guide, some repos for best practices. So a lot of the things that we've come up with are kind of a triangulation of a lot of different sources. So hopefully, for those of you who've been using Robot Framework for a while, a lot of these formatting decisions should not really be too much a surprise. But on the other hand, it's kind of like we did realize that there are quite a few sticking points. Like when you're looking at the code, like, where do you use equals or not use equals? When I first started using Robot Framework, I was a 2 spaces between each of the tokens. But it was from being in this group that they're like 4 spaces between each little argument, and I changed. So if there's something that like, oh, when you're looking at the style guide and you see something that's different from what you're doing, you know, find a block of code and decide and a code on your own, and like just try out the style. Um, put it on a separate branch or copy and paste and just mess around with the code to see if you like the new look or not. It's kind of like, and we'll get to more about this, is that the style guide isn't like some hardcore set of rules that must be followed regardless. Well, no. I mean, we're surviving just fine without the style guide. But for those people who are learning, who haven't been using Robot Framework for 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years now, because it's possible, giving them a running start at coming up with really good readable code from day 2, I would say, because no one's code is readable on day 1. Heck, even my code isn't readable on day 1. So I don't know if there's anything that can be added to that. Everyone done? Just out of curiosity? I didn't think the examples were that big, but no.
We have 4 responses at the moment.
Ooh.
Yeah. So maybe we can just have
Hunt
a
one.
look.
Yes.
And the people can, of course, continue and submit later as well. So no pressure, no rush. Now let me share one of them. Yeah, so let's look side by side. Let me close this one. Okay, I closed. Yeah. So let's open this one. And this one. Yeah, so really nice. Apparently, if else statements were not indented properly. And yeah, now it looks more logical. So well done. And
not a leading question, but does that code without the indentation actually run?
Yes. I'll show right here. It's a bit slow.
See, that would be one big difference between Python and Robot Framework. A lot of the times you actually don't need indentation for the code to actually work.
Only 2 spaces.
Yeah.
Only 2 spaces.
You see, it's passing. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is mostly about the indentation of like the control structures. I was trying to see if I could find something else that may have been done to it.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I do see one thing that I'm curious about, because I see in line 6, there's the today space equal and then get current date. I'm not sure whose example this was, but was that intentional to keep the equal sign in there?
I think Konstantin had his hand up.
Yeah, I had a different question. That wasn't my contribution.
And Kerwin has also his hand up.
So
Yeah,
in my case,
yeah.
So in my case, I would have kept the equal sign, but I would have gotten rid of the additional space between the variable assignment, because it just always throws me off whether or not it's an important space or not. So I always keep them compact. So that'd be something that I would probably change. I was looking at it right now. Just throwing that one out there.
And what is the reason that you want to keep that equal sign, although it's not necessary to run the code?
So while I have no trouble reading what is happening, I prefer the equal sign to clearly indicate that a variable is being assigned. I sometimes, like, I don't know, I find it easier to read. I just have much faster way of interpreting what's going on if I have a clear indication, and the equal sign is a little more definite than like nothing. Nothing is always a bit more ambiguous. So for me, it's one of the reasons why I prefer the equal sign, but I will adhere to whatever the project has chosen. It's just that my personal preference is I throw in the equal sign. And maybe it's a leftover from the good old days. I don't know. So
Yeah, and we get comment as well that it also Greg prefers without equal signs and have robot ID set up to complain about any remaining.
Greg, not sure if you want to speak up on why you think, well, you say it's syntactic sugar. If you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
And it's entirely a preference, but I inherited a code base that had a lot of non-idiomatic robot code. And as I was going through to clean it up, I was trying to make it as clear and simple as possible. And actually, one of my one of my gripes about robot framework, and I've been using it for almost 10 years now, is the inconsistency in how variables are assigned. Sometimes you define the variable, two or more spaces, then the keyword that populates the variable, and then more spaces and parameters, etc. Is you have that that design, and then you also have the inline design where you have the keyword, and then you have the variable that you are creating, and then you have the values that you want to assign there. And anyway, it was just one more thing to sort of create noise in the line. So and I found that the code base itself was very inconsistent. Sometimes there'd be no spaces. Sometimes there'd be immediately following the closing curly brace, there would be equal sign, and then sometimes there would be the closing curly brace, a space, and the equal sign. And every once in a while, I would find a typo that somehow wasn't caught, where it would be more than one space after the curly brace and the equal sign. So I just for consistency, I decided to enforce that the assignments would have no equal sign, but it is entirely a preference. But I like my code as reductionistic as possible.
And actually, I was going to say, and to that point, that is one of the weird things about using the equal sign. Like, it's great. It's very good syntactic sugar for some people, especially if you're not displaying the code to, if you are displaying the code to like business product owner types. They understand, oh, there's an equal sign, that must be something's actually being assigned there. But I will point out that the one tool to really help out to make sure that you stylized and also formatted things correctly is dry running everything. To make sure that you didn't accidentally put more than one space between the equals and the variable, which, to Gerwin's point, if you put the equal right afterwards, that's not a problem.
Yeah. And one other thing that I want to point out is a very important thing that Craig said. He said it was very inconsistent, and just for consistency's sake, you choose something. I think it doesn't matter which way you choose, whether you want to have the equal sign with a space or not at all. Being consistent in your codes in your code base is way more important than how you are consistent. To have it all in the same way really helps readability across your complete code base. So I just wanted to point that out, because consistency is something, I think it's somewhere in our introduction of the style guide too. It is one of the most important things when you're styling code. I see Garen still has his hand up. I'm not sure if that's a new one or check. And I did see Konstantin having his hand up earlier. Yes, so
Yes.
go ahead.
So about those string comparisons, I'm always not quite sure if it's preferable to use the notation with the curly braces or not, and in which case it would be
not.
Can you expand on that?
Do you guys want to go ahead, or should I start my
Go
rant?
ahead. Go ahead.
So, it's normally pretty simple. In every kind of Python expression, always use dollar and the word and as a name of the variable, and don't use the curly braces, except you have a super relevant reason not to do. Why or what's happening here? Like the dollar curly braces today, curly braces will be replaced with whatever value is in there first. Then you have a string, and that string will then be evaluated by Python. And
sorry, does it actually take done the wrapper, or what does it do?
no, it's the normal robot framework print to string thing. It's not the
Okay.
wrapper, and that's for example also one of the reason why it often kind of causes issues. For example, with strings here, if you have just a string hello world, and you would just say dollar curly braces my var curly braces equals quote hello world quote, would say, hey, hello is an unknown variable in Python, so I cannot evaluate this expression. But the dollar var without the curly braces actually means the literal variable itself is compared. That has the drawback that you have to consider the type of whatever is in there. So, for example, the string true is not equals true. The string true is equals true, but for example, the string false is equals also true. So that is something that is the tricky part if just using this dollar and the variable name. But it's always cleaner. The problem here, for example, would be if the today variable contains a quote, a single one, before it's first replaced by its string value, and then the whole thing is evaluated as Python, you can get syntax errors, which then leads to the situation that people always using triple quote, then the variable, and then again always triple quote just to have some kind of string conversion. So if you're not sure about the type, maybe you wrap it in a str bracket open bracket close, for example. So yeah, that's the alternative there. So my rule of thumb is always use this way, and only if I want to, for example, if I would like to replace the equal sign, sometimes with an unequal or sometimes with a greater one based on a variable, then I would use the curly braces, because that means I'm replacing a part of my Python code with another string. It's not meaning like I'm using that variable as part of an evaluation, but I'm just like making string concatenation.
I see.
Maybe Pekka has an opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I think Rene explained it pretty well. So when you use dollar curly brace, the curly braces are there, then it's replaced before evaluating in Python. So you can think about replacing that with the value and then typing that into Python, copy pasting that to Python REPL, and then things may work or may not. For example, if the thing that you have there is a dictionary, if the dictionary string representation happens to be again evaluatable in Python, then it will work. But that's how it goes. So it goes first to string and then it's evaluated. But if it's like in the second example here, without those curly braces, then it's robot framework has a kind of evaluates that in Python, but you uses kind of a custom special namespace where that dollar today is actually a special variable that will map to variable in robot framework names scope, and it will be you can access like that. So kind of complicated initially, but then relatively kind of makes sense when you get your head around it. Good thing is that this is explained pretty thoroughly in the user guide. There's an appendix about the evaluating expressions where this is explained with namespaces and everything else. So that's good. I've also, by the way, since I'm now here, I need to go put this assistant here to bed. Well, not to bed, but to stroller and go away soon. But there was a question earlier. I was back then watching this on via YouTube and couldn't comment about using those in assignments using ampersand or dollar or @, and why is it used in Robot Framework? So in keyword assignment, when there was earlier this example where there was a create dictionary used, it doesn't really too much matter do you use dollar and or ampersand there, and we could easily be without that possibility so that it would always be a dollar. The only kind of difference is that if you use ampersand, is that what robot is actually validated to make sure that what you return there is a dictionary. So if you would return an integer or string, it would actually fail at that point. So it will validate that. Another thing is that it actually will create it into this kind of a dot dict that where you can access key items using dot notation, which is sometimes useful. For example, if you have JSON data which you get as a Python dictionary, and then when you assign that to that kind of variable, then you can access items using like variable name dot something, which can be convenient. And if with list, it's only basic. It's also the kind of same thing. It's make sure that whatever you return there is a list or list-like, and it will convert it to Python list. With create dictionary, for example, it doesn't really matter because the create dictionary already returns this kind of a dot dict object anyway, so you will end up with a similar kind of object regardless of the syntax you use. But anyway, it's kind of optional in assignment, but it's used, why it's there in the syntax in the first place is that when you use those when you're calling keywords, then it's different. Because when it's with a dollar, you're passing that thing, whatever that thing is, as a single argument. But when you use a list with ampersand, @, then it should be expanded. And there was a comment that Python doesn't have this. Yeah, it doesn't, but this syntax, it maps to Python where you use asterisks when calling a function so that it's expanded. And then the ampersand, when you call it, is exactly like double asterisks, like calling it with name parameters. And this syntax actually, there was a robot, Kelby was saying that robot has Python kind of roots in many ways, but has its own thing. But this syntax happens to come from Perl. If there's any old guy like I am who has some point written Perl, it's not very popular these days, but it actually has this kind of distinction between so-called Scala variables and they call them arrays and hashes, but they are mapped to these lists and dictionaries. The syntax is also the same, so that Scala variables in Python Perl are with dollar, and then arrays are with @. So that's, I guess, that kind of @ there is an array. But the hash are created with the %, which we use for environment variables. So then when this dictionary variable syntax was added to Robot Framework at some point, that character was already reserved, so we ended up with ampersand. Which kind of works nicely because there's in Perl there's a mnemonic that this $, if you look at it, it looks kind of like S, so it's kind of a mnemonic that that's a scalar. And then when you have an @ sign, it's kind of it's looking like an A, so it's an array, and then the % kind of looks like H, so it's a hash. But in our case, it's kind of scalar and array, and then I guess that ampersand thing looks kind of like a D if you look at far away enough, so we can consider the dict. But so it's the keyword assignment thing is kind of there isn't that much benefit from this, but it's in the calling side. And also then in the variable section and with the new var syntax, we need to have those, because with the var syntax or in the variable syntax, if you use, for example, 3 values there, we need to know that are you going to create a list of 3 items, or do you want that to be is it just a long string that you want to specify in multiple pieces? So that there it's needed as well. This this stuff isn't explained as well as the other thing was explained in the user guide. The whole variables section in Robot Framework user guide is kind of a mess and needs to be rewritten at some point to explain all this better. It kind of makes sense, but it's just not explained well and it's not obvious. But when you get your head around it, you can kind of hopefully at least remember how it works. So hopefully this was somehow useful. Any question about that?
No particular ones. No. Thank you very much for the explanation and pleasure to put a face to the name.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say before I really need to leave because someone is falling asleep on my lap is that I'm really grateful for the whole style guide work group and everybody who has been helping it and with the work you've done. And it's great that there's a collaboration with Mateus and Bart about with tooling and so on and making it all work smoothly. I personally think that Robot Framework can be used in so many domains that it's kind of impossible to have one absolute first style guide that will work everywhere. And that's what I've been discussing with Bart and Mateus also, that I think those tools, for example, they should allow, for example, this in assignment, they should allow both using a equal sign there in assignment and not as long as you use it consistently. So I think consistency is absolutely the key. That said, if the style guide work group and people working with that find places where the syntax is unnecessary, like open, like for example this case, if you agree that well it would actually be much simpler for everybody if you could only have one syntax and that would be the only way it works, those are certainly something we can consider. Of course, you need to understand that if you change that and start requiring one syntax over other, it's kind of a big backwards incompatible change. But if it's agreed that that's actually would be better going forward, we can start that process like that. Then basically it would mean that we first announce that, okay, we are going to go with this syntax in the future without changing code at all. Then in some major release after like 2 years or something, we could actually deprecate it so that there's a deprecation warning, and then after 5 years or something, we could in the end change the syntax. So those changing syntax because Robot is already used so widely is a long task. We cannot do it. We don't want to break everybody's test. But then again, I value clean syntax a lot. So if there are proposals like that to make the syntax more strict, we definitely are interested. For example, another thing I think Rene mentioned yesterday or somewhere was this: the variables, they possibly should be case sensitive, and that's something we can also think in the future that might make sense and so on. And also otherwise, if the style guide work group or anybody else has ideas for new syntax that would somehow allow making more clear test cases, we are of course eager to hear. This var syntax that was introduced in Robot Framework 7, the main motivation of that was to make it have a uniform way to create variables. There was somebody actually commented that it's kind of annoying that there was this you can create variables with by assigning, but then there's also, if you're creating suite level variables, the syntax is different. You don't assign anymore. There's the variable name afterwards. Now the var syntax there, it uses the latter approach. There's the var and then the variable name, but that at least works regardless is it local variable or suite level variable and so on. So that's kind of the point there, is to have a consistent syntax. Of course, it's always a problem that if we add yet another syntax for doing something, even though it would be more consistent, now we will have one more way to do this, which is of course.
Pekka, honestly, it's super interesting, but I think we should let them continue their tutorial.
Yeah, I know.
To not hijack it too much.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, but that's hopefully answers the earlier question, and also again, thanks for the work group, and go on with the tutorial. As I said, I most likely need to leave here soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pekka. That was very good and comprehensive answers. I think Konstantin has his hand up.
No, I don't.
Okay. So that's
so. I have on the schedule that we're going to talk about just a quick RoboCop RoboTidy demo.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. Just quick note that we have received more responses, and we will definitely go through them and discuss with the community in style guide channel in Slack. So we will pay attention to the responses that you have sent, but we cannot go through all of them right now. So thank you very much.
Yes, and to add to that, I'm just wondering, having this discussion, did people think, oh, maybe I should do things a little bit different, or something along those lines? Does anyone has something that he thinks, oh, maybe I should do that differently then? I don't see anyone, so I'm gonna move on to a short demo about RoboCop and RoboTidy, and so one question before we start that, who hasn't been using RoboCop and RoboTidy yet? Could you raise a hand?
I have used RoboTidy, but not RoboCop.
Okay, good. Just as I said, RoboCop is a linter, so it just looks at your code. It doesn't do anything to it, but it tells you a lot. And as you can see, there's a lot of yellow squiggly lines, which means that RoboCop is telling you that you're doing something not according to the rules that it has been set to. Just to start with, for instance, here we have a little bit, oh, I can close this one, by the way, that makes it a little bit easier to read probably. So what RoboCop tells us here is that although this variable is in our variable section, that means that it is a suite variable, and thus the rule tells the rule that has been configured in RoboCop by default is that anything other than local variables should be capitalized or should be uppercase, and you can see all the information from the pop-up. And what you can do also is, if it lets me, click on the link that is provided, and that will then show you to the actual rule, and it will explain everything about that rule, and it gives some examples. So that will help you figure out what was wrong and how you can fix that yourself. As you can also see here, it shows a squiggly line, and that is because the keyword is missing documentation in this case. And by going through all those things, you can easily see what goes wrong. There's also the problems tab, and the problems tab shows you all the things that are wrong within the document that you have open, or if you have multiple open, it will show them all here. And you can go through here, and if you click on it, it will show where it is in your file, and you can fix it there. One other use of RoboCop is either in your CI pipeline, or if you just want to keep track of how the code quality of your code base is that you can use RoboCop to create a report, and that report will tell you exactly the amount of issues found, the amount of how many of them are warnings, how many are infos, and how many are actual errors, and it will list out what rule is being has been triggered and how many times, and that will help you figure out what goes wrong. And if you run this in your pipeline, you can actually set a threshold what is allowed to go wrong, and you can make it such that your pipeline will fail if it goes above that threshold, and people cannot merge that, for instance, if the code quality has gone backwards. That is a little bit about RoboCop. Well, we already said don't use RoboTidy to do the examples, and you've seen Manana laboriously going through the example that we're actually looking at right now. But if you use RoboTidy and you use, for instance, here the option format document, it will do it all pretty quickly. As you can see, it doesn't fix everything. That's either because it can do it, but I currently have it configured, have not configured that. But there's also some things that, of course, it cannot do. But it already helps us a lot, and it will tell us already a lot about what, a lot of things that we don't have to do anymore. And with that, I think I am to the end of this demo. Any questions? I see a hand from Garen.
Just one that I noticed while I was secretly playing around with RoboCop. It doesn't like the new notation that was suggested earlier in this talk. So the $sign notation, if you declare it and then use the advanced one, it doesn't recognize that you've been using the argument. I'll upload a little image somewhere. I'm not sure where, but currently RoboCop doesn't like that at the moment. It just says, oh, you've made a variable. You're not using the variable anywhere, which I thought was worth mentioning.
The var syntax, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
But if you're
Okay.
defining it and using, it says it's unused.
Yes, correct. I'm not sure where to post the picture, but I think I'll find a place.
Yeah.
Upload.
You can post current meeting chat or in Slack channel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know if. Do you have the latest version of RoboCop?
I have the one you are requiring in your project. So
Okay.
503.
Okay.
Yes.
just checking. I don't know.
yeah, that's all right. I'll put it in your style guide. Just like that might be the best place to put it right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll have a quick look at you. Thanks, Milan. I did see another hand up, but that went down, I think. Oh, Neil. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was already mentioned, so I didn't want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm kind of trying to work through this, so I might have missed a bit. Are you running RoboCop and the linter tool from either robot code or from the robot language server, or are you, like for RoboCop, do you have to run that from the command line?
I'm currently running it from robot code. And what I just did in the terminal was running it actually from the command line. So I did do a pip install robot framework -robocop, because you have to have RoboCop installed for it to work in robot code. RoboCorp's LSP, so the robot RoboCorp LSP, I think it is. That one has one built in, but that's a little bit of an older version. But if you install a new one, then it will pick that one.
Okay.
And I think, or that is for Tidy. I think that is for Tidy, and for RoboCop, you have to point it towards the one that you want to use.
Okay, so then because I'm one of the results of this conference is I'm apparently switching my whole team from robot language server to robot code. So I know nothing about robot code because I just happened to pick the wrong one. So so if I heard that correctly, we will have to pip install robot code or RoboCop, and then also RoboTidy as well, or was
Correct.
that?
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
got it.
So you have
And
to
then once it's
install.
installed, I have to configure it, and then it just comes up and works, or
Yes, it does.
okay.
So robot code will look for both of the tools to whether they are installed or not, and
Okay,
then
thank
it
you.
will read the config.
Yes, and I believe that so like I use LSP, and I'm also going to be converting everybody that I just told use LSP, and I'm going to say, oh, everyone use robot code. So good news is there is a tutorial. There was a tutorial earlier this week for robot code, so highly recommend that you look at that. That's number one. Number two, I believe robot code. So the LSP, you usually have to you have to tell it, okay, use your installed version of RoboTidy robot code, and it's based off of the virtual environment that you installed it in, typically. I think robot code just automatically, like if you have robot code pointed to a virtual environment and you have RoboTidy and robot code, RoboCop installed in that virtual environment, it'll automatically pick it up.
Yes,
I could be wrong. Which is
no, you're right, because that's exactly how I did it here.
Because, and that is way easier setup than the LSP. So
Yes.
that being said, anyway, continue.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, so this is to kind of enforce the rules and make it a lot easier to use the rules. But I think one of the questions that people might have is, okay, but I'm working on a project and I have to reformat some code every now and then because other people do it differently than I do. So how do you get to those conventions? So how do you get your team together and create those conventions?
Peter, sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe before conventions, maybe people can try using these tools for the same examples that they submitted.
Oh, yes. Oh, I could, of course, also.
They could be trying it out while they listen to you talk about the integration and conventions.
Yes, that's also a possibility. See if it ends up with the same thing that you created. But I think one of the important thing is if you, well, usually when you start to get frustrated with like, hey, I have to rewrite things every now and then. That is, especially if you're working with teams and they are changing maybe the code that you wrote. That is definitely the moment where you have to get everyone together. Okay, we need to come up with some kind of rules to set for all of us, and make sure that we also adhere to it. And one of the key things I think in doing that is also enforcing it by using the tools like RoboCop and RoboTidy, or mostly by enforcing it by RoboCop and making sure that RoboTidy helps you to do it easier. but don't make the mistake of just switching on all of the rules and get, well, a lot of people quite annoyed because they, for instance, if you can't merge, if there's more issues and you just switch on the rules, then they will get like probably 2,000 issues, and they can't fix that all within that specific pull request. So make sure that you gradually switch on the rules and use RoboTidy to already fix some things across your whole repository for those rules to start with, because otherwise it is just frustrating people, and it's good to enforce it, because otherwise it will get a mess soon enough anyway. But it's also good to just do that in small steps to make people get used to it and not to frustrate them into not being able to commit anymore. And with that, I'm gonna hand it back to Kelby.
No. Let me see. I'm going to share my screen because sharing is caring. Yes, I'm going to take over. I'm just going to do. I'm trying to think of what I want to do next. I can show the PowerPoint slide because, you know, it's fun looking at gnomes. So let me just start off by, you know, this is good. This is a good conversation, even though at times it might seem like we're, how shall I put it? Straying off the path of style guide per se. But quite honestly, this is the kind of discussions you should be having, because robot framework is a very forgiving scripting language. Case in point, our ugly examples that we came up with, they're ugly, but yet they're still working. It's like, hey, I have a working test. That's all that matters, right? No, that's not all that matters. And I can tell you, I can't share the code because it's my company's code, but I can tell you right now, I'm working with different teams where everyone's kind of inherited their robot framework project, and they're doing things without even knowing why. they're like putting their code out, and yes, it's working, but they're just choosing conventions that they inherited from the guy before. You know, they didn't really go through the process of, why do we do things like this? Why do we do it this way? And so my current task, and now that I've been on a few teams, is, and this is something that people higher up on the food chain, people that I report to, want, is a more consistent look and feel between the different projects, between the different teams. Because one of the advantages of all of this is that, let's say team member on team A is working on their little project. Once they move over to team B, to a different project, if the styling's the same, if the rules are different, if the structure's different, if the decisions on how things are presented are different, that person will probably spend the next sprint or two just trying to figure out where everything is. And that's spending time, and that's spending productivity, which no business wants someone just sort of sitting around just trying to figure out what a new team is doing. So having that sort of congealed consistency between projects can go a very long way for like just basic productivity. Conversely, when you something I always ask interviewers is like, when tests fail, not if, when tests fail, what do you do? What does everyone do? They look at the test cases. If the test cases are hard to read, hard to understand, hard to navigate, not consistent, that's also wasting time. So style has a monetary benefit for your company. Even if you installed RoboTidy today and installed RoboCop and don't do what Guido said, and you just turned everything on, but you just followed all those rules, but then you did it to all your projects, that would be something. And then you can like make decisions like, oh, well, I don't like that. But then you go back and say, oh, look, here's a style guide. I'm going to take this style guide as my starting point that we've developed and then modify it to make it something that you can use in-house. One thing that was very fun is one of the earlier members of the style guide group, Vaclav, who's done a couple of presentations already. It was fascinating to read, like they put together this multi-page document of style, and I'm like, this is great. I wish I had this. And it just goes a long way to have like a starting point, especially if you're newbies. Like if you only know what it's like for me to like look at the code examples on Slack in the newbies channel. And I'm like, oh, you need to read our style guide. Just read the style guide. It can go a long way, but I don't also want it to become like a bludgeoning. I've never wanted it to become like something like a pet bait. Oh, you're doing this wrong. Oh my gosh. No, it's just conventions that you can decide to use or not use within your company. Guidance, a little flexibility. But you have to be consistent about it, which is the key there. Something that doesn't help, though, obviously, is the fact that Robot Framework does allow you to present the same kind of functionality in different ways. And maybe from the style, and as Pekka said, maybe that spurns a conversation of, boy, we really have been doing this wrong. Maybe we should do it better. And then you submit something to an open source project and, oh no, you're part of the community. What could be worse? I mean, there was something I was going to do and I forgot because that was like so 15 minutes ago. Taking a look at the scheduling here. Who's next after me? Oh, I'm after me. But do you like those of you who are here? Did you ever have like have you had discussions about style? Like some of us are more obviously, yes, we have companies that do this professionally, but hey, you don't count. I know Robin will say stuff. I'm more interested in Neil. I want Neil to go. I want Neil to say something. We'll get to you, Robin.
Okay, you want me to go now?
Go.
Okay. Yeah, I work on a team with a bunch of we have a whole building in India of a bunch of test engineers and a couple here in the United States, and we're switching from a Python unit test based approach to robot framework, and this was all replan just a couple months ago. So I'm trying to pick up robot framework as best I can. I'm still new to it, so but generally I find that getting our team to use good style is hard, but I always think it's worth it. So that's kind of why I'm here. I'm trying to get a good idea, trying to get a lay of the land. Like I'll say, I've already learned a few things, so I'm going to be switching from 2 spaces to 4. Not for like, I don't even understand like why I might want to do that, but just the fact that everybody else is doing it. So like in Python, for example, we use PEP8, and then there's a bunch of certain directives that will just turn off because they just don't really, certain, like adding doc strings to like a repr method or something. I don't really care. So we'll disable certain things. So yeah, I mean, that's my opinion is, I don't know that I don't really have enough feedback right now on how closely we'll follow the robot style guide, I guess as much as possible. But we're still kind of just looking through that. So I think we're going to just err towards doing whatever the rest of the industry is doing. And then from there, if we need to change anything, if we have a good reason, we'll definitely do that. My main frustration out of this conference is everybody else seems to be doing web, and we do requirements-based, like DO 178 testing for the FAA. So we're doing we're using it a different way. And I don't know that that's going to matter at all, but that's kind of our use case. And yeah, the only other question I had was specifically like doing, I think, data-driven tests. So data-driven tests are like where you have a test table that is very close to what we're doing. And I don't know that there was any specific style, like question-wise, if there's any style guidance on those, that would be a question.
We have a whole work item for templated tests and data-driven testing. It's for version 2.
Okay, that would be good. And then the other quick question, this is maybe a little out of scope, but is there a way to combine, like, so we have like a data-driven test, there's certain tests that don't necessarily so we have like a test table, and then half of them we need to run through, usually have like a test template keyword. And then we have some tests that just don't fit in that, it's hard to send the data through that test template. So I don't know that there's a way to combine like, a table, but then I have a couple exceptions. I guess I'd have to put that in a different robot file, which is how we're doing it now. But that's kind of stylistically, but I think in that case, we're limited to what the framework provides. And I assume we have to separate those out.
Yeah. I've had mixed success with that, but yeah, sort of out of scope, but also kind of in scope because it's talking about like project structure-y kind of things.
Right.
But question, are you a member in the Slack channel?
I joined it yesterday, I think.
Okay.
I haven't said anything, but I'll be.
So we can
looking
find
through.
you and you can find us. That's the important part. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And I think one or two things to add. One about the 4 spaces. I've done quite a few training or given training in Robot Framework, and one of the things that we usually run into halfway the first day is that people say, hey, it's not working, and then I don't have to look at a code most of the times, because if we were using 2 spaces, I could usually say, okay, just check your spaces. And that meant that they just had 1 space instead of 2 spaces. At the end of day 1, it is usually that the whole class, when someone says, hey, it's not working, then that the whole class screams at the same time, check your spaces, because that's been happening all day. So one of the things to make sure that you can way more easily see the difference between your arguments and your keywords is to have the 4 spaces, because 2 spaces versus 1 space is hard to see. 4 spaces versus 1 space is quite easy to see. So that's an answer to that one. And the second one, to the templating, I'm not sure if you're using the data driver or just the templated tests, but I think that data driver might have some things to help you there.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. And the spaces, from my point of view, as you get older, your eyes start to suck more. My eyes particularly suck. And I like the 4 spaces now because I can tell what's going on faster.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thanks to both you guys for that. like in Python, I guess, like for some people, like, we've had issues with people mixing tabs and spaces, and the tolerance of languages sometimes is frustrating to me because, like if one of those were better than the other one, why would you support both? So like in the future, like I know like in the case of certain versions of Python, like I know that they would just flat out refuse to run if certain indentation rules weren't met. So I wonder if like Robot 7 or 8 one day might just say, refuse to run a test if it doesn't use 4 spaces or something. So our case is like, so I have a bunch of people offsite writing tests, and our oversight is, there's only so much of us to do the oversight. So if we end up with ugly tests, we end up with ugly tests. That's, we can only do so much. So trying to get those perfected is hard. So the more hard systems I have in place, like RoboTidy and things like that, I can usually say push the button and do this, and then that's better. But sometimes even more enforcement, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that's kind of like would be nice.
And I would definitely recommend in as soon as a project gets bigger than one person, I would recommend to enforce pre-commit hooks, enforce linting, implement linting and auto formatting in your pipeline, define all that stuff. And specifically, for example, this auto formatting, I would always define, you may have to fix a little bit of the tidy stuff, or like methods to avoid formatting on certain points. But generally I would say as a pre-commit hook, even always run tidy. So
A
when
great
you
idea,
say
and
git
I'm going
commit,
to ask that.
just reformat the code.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that as soon as I get out of this meeting, if we can add that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this should be done as early in the project as possible.
Yeah, and this spaces and tabs, for example, or leading or tailing white spaces or things, or specifically tailing white spaces. These are all things that your editor can support. So you can set VS Code, create a VS Code workspace. In the VS Code workspace, configure all that stuff for everyone. So when people open the project, they use the VS Code workspace. And look to things like Python inv. So invoke is a little bit like npm task or sbt build task or stuff like that. So you have a Python tool where you can just say inv space lint and or inv space format or something like this, and it will just execute the Python code that is in that function that you have in your tasks py, which also makes it convenient for the people to just execute these commands and see what they are doing. Same like inv test or so, which runs the robot with the specific configuration that you need to do or so, or use for running. I mean, you can use robot code, but I think these kind of help us make it for them as convenient as possible to follow your rules. And yeah.
So I'm paying attention to the time. And I know Robin wanted to say something. I'm willing to give up
Yeah,
a few minutes on the next section.
okay, no. The question is, have you ever had discussions about formatting? And one interesting one I've had for a bit of time is on the maximum line length. And this was eventually settled to be the Twitter limit of 140 characters. So if you have these type of discussions also, I mean, the other team member wanted to go with 200. Now he was working on a curved screen, a really, really wide one. I was working on a laptop screen, often during commute in the train. So, I mean, there are more things to consider than just like what works for me in front of my office screen.
It's funny
80
that
is difficult. 80 is low for robot framework. So you kind of have to go over that. I would say maybe 120, which is also used by like JavaScript, TypeScript. But and yeah, consider these things.
And actually, this was one of the first conversations, like in the first month or two, we were talking about line length. I think Renee brought this up. It's like it's back when we had console screens that were like 14 inches, that 79 character limit. But now, most people
100
have
is
something
fine
between
typically, yeah.
25 to 27 is average, I think. And 120, I think, was our recommendation, but 140 is doable. I mean, even on a large screen, especially if you've like scaled it up, because my vision sucks. That 120 characters line limit can be too long in some cases. Just trying to you don't want to go too much further than 140. That's what I was trying to get at. So to think about that, but yeah, 80 is just incredibly limiting. And although I feel kind of like I'm cheating by doing something different other than what PEP 8 recommends, but here we are.
Well, for Python 80 is actually there's many reasons for that, and it also ties into like how capable are you as a human to read long lines and stuff like that. It's actually very interesting, and it has very little to nothing to do with console length and stuff like that. It's like look at a newspaper and look at the column size. Take a book, count the characters on a line. You'll not hit 100. You'll not even hit 70. There's reasons for that, and it's how your brain works. So, yeah. But for robot, maybe 120, I guess. But
Yeah, currently we recommend 120, and one of the reasons why not shorter or longer is that I think in robot framework we have keywords which takes up quite some space. It can be the whole sentence. So I think it will be too limiting if we go below that. And yeah, like you said, it's important to take into account how people use it. For example, if people want to avoid scrolling when they are looking to IDE's windows side by side, for example, should that be readable without scrolling or not? But right now, yeah, we recommend 120.
Yeah, especially as a minimum, because if you go below 120, it's usually for robot code, robot framework code, it's just hard to read at some point because you probably will have to scroll back and forth horizontally. Yeah.
So this is cool. This is good conversation. Like I said, these are the kind of things you need to be talking about in your little home turf businesses. And I'm happy to say that even with my project, I took in one team's project, and then I just turned on RoboCop, and it just lit up like a Christmas tree, and they're like, huh, I guess we need some work to do. But the cool thing is, like, they're like, oh, look at all this work we're gonna have to do. But I'm like, hey, 90% of these problems are solvable by RoboTidy. Like, you just run RoboTidy once, and suddenly, all of these most of the errors go away. But moving along, because time being what it is, talk about contributions. We've talked about.
Kelby, just one thing. When you share your screen, can you zoom in a bit? So because at the moment you're
Yep.
wasting space a lot on the left and the right side.
How about
Yeah,
that?
awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So obviously we have the repo. This is the repo that we work in, like actually track all of the issues. This is where we do our initial commits of proposed changes to the guides. then we actually like move the actual repo gets we submit it over to the guides page because they have their own repo. But this is where you want to go as far as like, hey, I want you to talk about, you know, revised structure of the section's length, or add some rationale to the rules. That was one. Or talk about the arguments file, which if you use robot code, maybe you don't need an arguments file. Here we have the test template test cases. So like talking about data driven. So a lot of things are still here to be worked on. So this is like an easy way to submit your problems. Yeah, say, I have an issue I need to talk about. The other thing is we have our style guides channel. Oh boy, this is going to be fun if this works. Yeah, no. Let me move over here. So oh, come on, let me do it. Let me do it. Can I? It's not letting me. Oh, really? Oh, I hate you, Zoom. There's the style guides channel in Slack. Fabulous location to like just talk about style. I mean, you can certainly use the general like robot framework channel to talk about things, but if you have more specific questions, the style guide channel is open for business. The nice part about having some of our team members being off by 8 hours is that there's always going to be somebody looking at it. So while they're sleeping, I'm not typically. It'd be great to have someone like in Australia. Who do we know in Australia? Oh, wait. That we can have 24-hour coverage. The other thing that you can do is you can actually join the work group. We don't have any special handshakes. You just have to tell us that you want to join. We meet once every 2 weeks, or we have been meeting once every 2 weeks. That might change a little bit, or at least for a month or two. And we just get together and talk for like an hour to 2 hours. Sometimes we work through problems together. Sometimes we do it more as a planning, what are we going to work on next? Nothing too formal, nothing too, no secret handshakes, no strange sacrifices. Gnomes typically aren't involved, although it's talked about. We occasionally talk about, chocolate, beer, what we're doing on vacation. So it's kind of a fun place to be. I consider it my island of sanity. I know that sounds strange from like my regular workplace because I'm starting my day at work when the others are usually ending their day. So if you want to join, even if you just want to try us out, if you want to join, you're like, oh, I gotta see what's going on here. Great, join us, talk about it. It's great. And if you decide, this isn't for me, then you can go on and do something else. It's fine. We won't hold it against you.
And that happened already. For instance, Mateus joined us. He gave us some really good feedback to structure our sessions a little bit better because we weren't doing that too well. But nowadays we actually have have a little bit more of a structure to it, and we note down what we've been talking about. But then it turned out that he did not have enough time to keep coming to our sessions. And of course, that's fine. If you join in, that's nice. But if you don't have time, it's fine if you have other priorities.
Yeah, it's not necessary to like be constant participant of the meeting if you don't have time. But for example, if you have something to discuss or just join sometimes to polish some topics, you are very welcome. And please do have low thresholds to reach us.
Our level of acceptance is, it really does go back to the people that show up are the best people for the job. And we still, I mean, we still get visitations by members of like Robot, like Mateus. He pops in, says something, we say cool, and then he goes off and does something else. Vaklo sometimes shows up in the channel and then goes on and does something else. So it's fine, and we do allow vacations. We don't say you must show up.
I would. Are you done? Then I would at least stop the YouTube stream.
Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
at the at the end of the slideshow.
Then thank you very much for joining and have fun. See you. Okay. So I